Hello, I am April Rovero, founder and executive director of the National Coalition Against Prescription Drug Abuse. We work to prevent prescription drug-related substance use disorder and overdose death through community education, policy change, and legislative action. Another key initiative of ours is that we are now conducting opioid overdose rescue training and distributing naloxone in the form of Narcan, the spray version, so we can help community members overturn overdoses that they encounter. And we're hoping overall with the education will reduce those overdoses. So we are here today to have Cathy Taughinbaugh provide some information that's going to be especially helpful, I think, for our parent followers. Cathy herself is a parent with a child in long-term recovery, thankfully. She's also a certified parent coach, and you're going to hear about the program she uses to educate parents. She also has her own practice and even an online training program that is called Regain Your Hope. Cathy and I met quite a few years ago now while we were both parent ambassadors with the partnership at drugfree.org. That was what it was named back then. It has now evolved to be Partnership to End Addiction as it came together with another organization. Cathy has also produced two really important and informative books. The first one was in 2011. It was called 101 Natural Highs for an Amazing Drug-Free Life. And that I've read myself. It's really good. Lots of great helpful information. And then she followed that in 2014 with Parents to PhDs. And this was a compilation of 28 interviews with people such as David Sheff and Christopher Kennedy Lawford and Tommy Rosen, who share their experiences and the impact that they've had personally with substance use disorder within their own family setting. So, Cathy, I'm going to turn this over to you, and I really look forward to what you're going to share with us. You know, it's going to be very helpful, again, for our parents out there.
Great. Thank you, April.
You're welcome.
So I am going to pull up my, there we go. Okay, so my talk today is on support for families who are concerned about drug or alcohol use. So if you're a parent who's concerned about your son or daughter, know that I've walked in your shoes. Just a little bit about me. I am a parent who has a daughter in long-term recovery. I also have a son who struggled for a number of years with too much marijuana use, too much pot smoking. So we've dealt with that. We've experienced treatment programs, sober living, or my children have experienced treatment programs, sober living, intervention, and counseling. And so I feel like I understand what parents have gone through. During the years after about 5 years of working with my daughter, I decided to start a website and become a coach. And also during that time, I became connected with the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids, which is now the Partnership to End Addiction, and work with them also as a parent coach. So we know that family members are badly affected by substance use. Having a child with a drug or alcohol issue leads to a lot of stress for families, especially parents. Parents deserve help and often get very little support. With treatment centers, many do have family programs, but still to this day, there's too many that really don't know what to do with parents. So they often don't offer much support. And also parents feel that they're being judged or blamed for the child's drug use. During this process, parents are often feeling worried, anxious, depressed. They feel guilty, angry, resentful, frightened, sad, and alone. So it's a difficult situation for parents. And unfortunately, this can go on for months and sometimes often years. So what parents can do, some things that they can do is to attend a meeting, to reach out to a counselor or coach, to use the CRAFT approach, which I'm going to be talking more about today. Reach out to the partnership, which does have a helpline, and they have a peer coaching program. And there's also many books, videos, and websites. So many people do know about the 12-step meetings. There's Nar-Anon and Al-Anon. And then there's also a Smart Recovery for family and friends meetings that are available online too. So I just want to point that out if you're not familiar with those. The shame, stigma, and fear of stigma keep some parents isolated and alone. So again, parents feel judged and embarrassed about the situation. And also, as I mentioned before, they feel like it's their fault or they've done something wrong. And we know that most parents do the very best they can to help their kids get through life and get on, to start their way to adulthood. So the way parents cope and which strategies they put in place can not only help their child, it can also help them feel and do better. So the more a parent takes care of themselves at any time, but especially when their child is struggling with substance use, the better off their child will be. And what I often talk about with parents is a patchwork approach. So going to meetings or talking to coaches or counselors, reading books or whatever, pulling information that makes sense for you, that works for your situation. We know one size doesn't fit all. Every situation is different. So you want to really filter what you hear and make sure that feels right for you and for your child. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about the Community Reinforcement and Family Training. CRAFT is the acronym, if you have not heard about it. It's the program for me that made the most sense. I had only been told, again, when I was going through this, about one option, and that was going to a meeting and learning about this 12 steps approach, which has been very helpful. And today that is still a helpful program for many people. But I do strongly feel that the CRAFT is another program to add into your toolbox so that you have all the strategies and science-based, evidence-based research approaches as well. So CRAFT offers new tools for a complex problem. So this is the first of 5 sections that I want to go over that explain the CRAFT approach. There are many complexities around the continued growth of the prefrontal cortex, and we know that for teens, the self-control is not fully developed. With that and puberty, it can influence decisions that teenagers make. Depression, anxiety, ADHD, and those struggling with learning disabilities and other social pressures can have a teen turning to substances to ease their discomfort. A research study that was done in 1999 by Drs. Miller, Myers, and Taughinbaugh took groups of family members, some parents, but also spouses, and put them into 3 groups of 12 weeks each. And within each group, one group was given the CRAFT approach, the other group was given an intervention approach, and the third group was given an Al-Anon approach. And at the end of the 12 weeks, what the goal was to try to get loved ones who were resistant to going to treatment, to try to move these loved ones into a treatment program or be more willing to get help. So 12% of the Al-Anon group found that they had loved ones that were willing to get help. And I do want to explain that Al-Anon does not advertise themselves as a group that's helping you get your child into treatment. That's really not the point of Al-Anon. Al-Anon's really a program for helping parents feel better, do better, and help them take care of themselves. But I think it's important to know that when you go to an Al-Anon meeting, that is not really what you're going to find there. Interventions is another one of 30%. And although interventions can be very helpful, especially if it's a life or death situation, some of the downsides of interventions are that there is resentment and sometimes anger because the intervention happened. And then sometimes people do go to treatment, but they don't really feel like this was the right time for them, or their whole heart wasn't in it, so they leave early, or they tend to relapse pretty quickly. And then 70% were able to get their children or loved ones into a treatment using the CRAFT approach. And this is something you can do at home. It's a communication strategies as well as other strategies that help you motivate your child to change. So CRAFT has 3 main goals. Goal 1 is to help your loved one get into treatment. Goal 2 is to reduce the use of alcohol or drug use, whether or not your loved one has engaged in treatment yet. And goal 3 is to improve the lives of the concerned family members and friends. The program highlights the challenges that family members face. It brings a hopeful message that there is something parents can do to influence their family situation. And CRAFT helps with understanding. So understanding what's going on with your loved one, understanding what is driving them to use substance use, and really taking time to listen to what is going on for them so that you can be the most help. So we know that the struggle around addiction is different for every family. One size doesn't fit all. And CRAFT gives parents a set of lenses for understanding the problem of substance use and action steps that parents can take. It gives you conversation tools and how best to help your struggling child. And again, this can be any family member. For this talk, I'm coming from the point of a parent, but know that it can be for any family member. So we know that one size doesn't fit all. There are many positive paths to change. Success is more likely when you understand the uniqueness of the family situation. And again, CRAFT gives parents the tools to recognize black and white thinking from peers and professionals. So we want to know that one size doesn't fit all. There's not just one answer for your child's situation. And CRAFT also encourages parents to stay involved and to not feel that they need to detach or let go of their child. Behaviors make sense, even your child's. There is a motivation behind your child's behavior. It's not random, or they're not just being bad. You don't want to take your child's behavior personally. Rather, we want parents to increase empathy for the issue. There are positive things that you can do to help turn your child's behavior around. Ambivalence is normal, and we know that mixed feelings make sense, especially when it comes to substance use. Ambivalence is a normal part of changing any behavior. So when you think about going on a diet or something along those lines, there's a lot of starts and stops. One day you're ready to go on and stick with the program, and then other days maybe not so much. So this is the same for your child, and they may be reluctant to change or to give up their drug or alcohol using behavior on any given day, whereas other days they might be more willing to make those changes. And enabling is an overused idea as part of the CRAFT approach. So an active, positive, and engaged strategy to help your child can be more effective. And these ideas are backed by research. So words like enabling, codependent, powerlessness, and to detach with love are often used, but they can be shaming and discouraging for parents. So we do really discourage parents from calling themselves an enabler or calling their partner enabler or a codependent, that kind of thing. Parents usually try to do the best they can, especially at the beginning. They really don't know what to do often. And so sometimes it just takes a while to really learn what's going to be effective and what's not. Another idea with CRAFT is to pay attention to the lights. This is paying attention to conversation signals. Stay connected and move the conversation forward. We don't want parents to be confrontational or have your child be defensive. When you want to move the conversation to a path that is more effective and helpful. So with the lights strategy, if you feel like the conversation's going well, it's a green light and you want to keep talking and continuing the conversation. So your child is listening to you, they're engaging with the conversation. But if you feel that you're hitting a red light where your child's being defensive or they're arguing or shutting down, slamming doors, that kind of thing, that's the signal to stop the conversation. You can try strategies to pull it around to be more of a green light, but you also might want to just stop the conversation and come back to it another time. So these and the other strategies that I'm going to be talking about all take practice. You aren't going to be able to get it right every time. And like anything new, you want to practice, and sometimes it's going to go really well, but the longer you practice, the better you're going to be at it. So the next section is on helping with self-care. And this is job number one for parents and other family members. You want to focus not only on your child, but also on yourself. Dealing with substance use is really stressful. And I'm sure you've heard this before, but you want to put your oxygen mask on first, like they tell you in the airlines. Self-care is critical over the long haul, and you will be more effective as a support person for your child, and you will also be a role model for your child when you do take time to take care of yourself. Manage your emotions is another area that's something that we want parents to think about. So having emotions around your child's substance use is very normal. I mean, it's hard to be objective. This is your child who you love and you've raised since birth. So it's difficult to step back from them and those feelings. And feelings of guilt and shame are normal as well. And no, you're not alone with those. But we want people to not overreact or become overly emotional when discussing things with your child. You want to try to stay calm, non-reactive, effective, and clear about expectations. So craft teaches coping skills to manage emotions and to help you stay more balanced when you're talking with your child, and just feelings that you have inside as well. So remember, you're not alone, and we want to reduce isolation. We know isolation is tempting. This is sometimes can feel really embarrassing. You don't want to have to admit to your friends and family that your child is struggling, but it's not so helpful to isolate. It increases your stress levels. And so getting support is very critical. It's important to reach out in whatever way makes sense to you to get support and to get help. Shame versus self-compassion. Shame is judgment over past actions and feeling regret. Shame is judgment and also about the past and judgment about who we are as a person. But rather than sort of dwell in the shame of it, we would like parents and other family members to practice self-compassion. Noticing your suffering, practicing self-kindness, and acknowledging that suffering is a normal aspect of life. Helping with words is something that's a big part of the craft approach. So they offer the love skills, which is listening, offering information, validating, and empathizing. So the next section is an overview of the communication skills and how parents can improve their communication skills, which will then create space for change. So listening is one of a very important part of the craft approach. And there are ideas with listening around open questions, affirmations, reflections, and summarizing. So briefly, I'll go over most of these later on as well, but open questions is really talking with your child and asking questions that have more than a yes or no answer. So words such as what or how are good ones to think about. Affirmations are really recognizing what your child's doing well and acknowledging that. We know that addiction is not every part of your child. There's much more to them than just their drug or alcohol use, and that many of our kids that are using drugs are also doing things well. They are trying in other areas of their life. So we want to recognize that and acknowledge it. Reflections is important in that you reflect back what your child has said to you. So often as parents, and I know I've done this a lot as well, is that we want to fix the situation. We want to give our child ideas, solve the problem. But sometimes a better way is to take a break and just really listen to your child. And one way that they know you've heard them is when you reflect back what you've heard, either what the words that they said or the feelings that they expressed. And then summarizing is when you pull the conversation together and just summarize it so that you can move on or maybe make some decisions and move forward. So your child is more likely to change when they feel like they're being heard. So two things you can ask yourself around listening is, what did I learn about my child in this conversation? And how did my child feel about the conversation? Offering information is a key ingredient to parenting. Our kids may not be so open to hearing suggestions or information from their parent. So here's a tool that can help sometimes when you just want to get a point or two across and you want your child to really be open to listening. So it's called the information sandwich, and think about knocking on your child's bedroom door. And you want to ask permission. Is this a good time to talk? Are you available right now? Or I have a question I want to ask you. And allow your child the opportunity to say yes or no. So if they say yes, you're obviously good to go. If they say no, you can ask for a different time. You can try this again at another day when your child's maybe feeling better. So know that there will be other opportunities. So once you've gotten your child's permission, you want to provide information. And when you do this, you want to keep it brief. You want to think about what it is you want to ask your child. Don't do the whole laundry list of issues. Just pick one or two. And then the third piece is to check back. Did this make sense? Do you have any questions? Can I explain this in a different way? So again, the information sandwich is asking permission, providing information, and checking back. Validating and empathizing. So validating is the process of acknowledging his or her experiences or thoughts, feelings, and actions. And again, it's just noticing what your child's experiencing, noticing what they're saying, and acknowledging it. And with empathy, you're understanding things from your child's perspective. So both are easily conveyed by your attitude and also by your tone of words. The SURF skills is another conversation tool that can be very helpful. And SURF stands for specific, understanding, responsibility, and feelings. So being specific, vague requests are easy to ignore. For example, if you have a teenager and you're saying, I need you to be more responsible, it's hard to really measure that. What does that really mean? It's better to be more specific. An example would be on school days, you need to get up and get up with the alarm and go to school on time. Something along those lines. So again, when you're asking your child to do something, you want to be very clear that it's measurable. You have a very easy way of telling whether they did it or whether they didn't do it. The next one is to offer an understanding statement. The more your child believes that you get what they're going through, the less defensive they will be. They will be more likely to hear you and follow through with your request. Take partial responsibility is one that can be sometimes difficult for parents, but you want to share a piece of the problem. And by doing that, it doesn't mean that we're blaming you or that you want to blame yourself or that you are the reason that your child has gone down this road, but you do want to come at substance use as a team. It's a team effort. So when you take partial responsibility, you decrease defensiveness. It promotes problem solving rather than blaming one person or another. So there's always things, there's no perfect parenting. We know that parents do the best they can and that things come up in your child's life. And so if there's something that you feel may have contributed to their substance use, you just want to talk about that and express, that you feel badly about that or take some part responsibility for it. And then finally, label your feelings. State your feelings in a calm manner. You want to lower the temperature when you're stating your feelings. So if you if your feelings are ones that are like furious and terrified, you want to lower that down to frustrated and worried. Things like that's an example that you can use. So you don't want to be really off the deep end. You want to really try to rein that in as much as possible. It doesn't help your child. It just escalates things, but it is fine to express how you're feeling. You're part of this picture, and it's important that your child or other family members know how you feel about certain things. And then the next section is avoiding conversation traps. So the first one is the information trap. And these are just ways that parents can talk to their kids. I think for a lot of us, if there's something on our minds, we just come right out and say it to our children. And most of the time it's fine. But when your child has a substance use issue, you really want to think about how you're approaching things, because there's a lot on the line here, and you want your child to really be ready to recover or be ready to make some changes. So the information trap is trying to educate your child without getting an understanding of what they already know. Too much information becomes white noise. So an example for a teenager could be, we know that, of course, marijuana use affects the brain, brain development, and that's an important thing that your child should know. But you don't want to repeat something like that or some other fact about drug use just over and over and over again. You want to, once they know the information, maybe there's another way to provide it, or to come at it in a different way is more helpful. The next one is the lecture trap. And this is one-way communication, talking at your child versus talking with your child. And again, I know a lot of us have done this, but it's important to try to think about a different way of approaching the issue with your child. The third one is the labeling trap. And when you label your child an addict or an alcoholic, it's just not so helpful. You might end up with arguments around the name and not the behavior. And studies have showed that children or young people are less likely to want to get help if they have to put on the hat of being an addict or an alcoholic. So, and especially with teens, I think most of them really at that point are experimenting. There might be some beginning dependence, but I think it would be a stretch to label most teenagers addicts or alcoholics. And again, we don't want to get into that. If they decide they want to go to an AA meeting and they want to call themselves an addict or an alcoholic, that's their choice and that's fine. I know some people now are saying they are a person in long-term recovery or they're a person in recovery. And personally, that to me sounds a lot more positive. But again, we want to stay away from labeling our kids. And the next one is the blaming trap. And this is just where your conversations that focus on finding the person at fault. It just isn't so helpful. It creates defensiveness and arguing with your child and that kind of thing. It just really doesn't lead you anywhere. And similar to that is the taking sides trap. And this is when parents take a particular side. Your child may defend their behavior and may argue, about not changing, when honestly, they may not feel that strongly about what they're arguing, but they just feel like they're kind of backed into a corner. So it's helpful to avoid that and to really come at the problem as a team player. Like, we're going to work together as a team rather than saying your child is wrong, they're the one with the problem, and nobody else has any responsibility in it. And again, the question and answer trap is closed questions with yes or no answers or conversation stoppers, and open questions using words such as what or how promote conversation, and again, less defensiveness and less feeling like you're being interrogated. All right, so the last section is helping with actions. And these are tools to help parents encourage change in a child's behavior and motivation. They're a more effective response to a child's behavior and help influence the process of change. So how to solve a problem is something that can be real helpful. And I talk to parents a lot about brainstorming with their kids. If you have an issue with your child, for example, house rules or something along those lines, which can be with a teen or somebody older, one way to kind of attack the problem is to brainstorm. Invite your child to sit down and brainstorm with you, involve them in the process. So you want to define the problem, figure out what the problem is, brainstorm all possible solutions, and let your child add in anything, even if you don't agree with it or it seems really off the wall. Just let them put any ideas down that they want. And then you're going to go back through and eliminate unwanted ideas. So you're going to have an opportunity to say, I can't really support that, or I don't really think this is practical, that kind of thing. You want to select one potential solution, or if you're doing rules, you want to, come up with your list of things that you can both agree on. Think about obstacles and address those. What can you do if there's some issues with obstacles, and then see how things go. And you can always come back to your brainstorming. It's not ingrained in stone. You can come back to it and go through it again. Parent collaboration is a big piece of the craft, but something that is important for all families. Collaboration helps everyone, especially parents, and you want to try to get on the same page as your partner as much as possible. And sometimes this can be really difficult. Parents come at parenting, just even when their kids are doing well, you come from different families and you're raised differently than your spouse or your partner. So some parents feel that their partner is uncooperative and has different ideas. Often what I hear is one person comes from kind of the tough love approach and the other person is really wanting more of a compassionate approach. So even though you may disagree, you want to try to work together. You want to present a united front to your child. And what you can also do is pick a few ideas from one person and try those for a period of time, and a few ideas from somebody else, from the partner. You can also, like, for example, if you want your partner to learn more about craft, you can just pick out a few things that you might want him or her, to try and see if that works. So there's different ways to approach it, but I think the best thing to keep in mind is that, parent collaboration is important. So positive reinforcement is really one of the foundations of the craft approach. And Dr. Myers likes to say you get more bees with honey. So it's a contrast to detachment or punishment. Practicing positive reinforcement is not the same as enabling. You want to reward positive behaviors, and you do not want to be rewarding negative behaviors. So and again, when you are using positive reinforcement, you want to reinforce your child with something that is meaningful to them. And so by positive reinforcement, it can start with something just as simple as a hug, words acknowledging, thank you, you did a great job, those kinds of things. If you feel that your child is doing something more, if they've really made an effort to change in a certain way, it's great to bring in rewards, a little bit more, like something, a dinner, a special dinner. You can, a gift card is something that is brought up often. You can supply an activity for them or some equipment for an activity that's going to be healthy and will compete. So the thing that we want to keep in mind with reinforcement is that your child is getting reinforcement from their drug use. That it's helping them in some way. And so you want to provide rewards so that they see healthy behavior, can have positive reinforcement as well. And then allowing natural consequences to happen. So this is one that can be difficult as well, or a little stressful for parents. So you want to think through how you're going to handle this with your child. And there's 3 responses, which is allowing for natural consequences, which is recommended; punishment, which is less recommended. We have really found, or the partnership and some of these other groups have found that trying to discipline your child out of substance use rarely really works. It's not that helpful. And enabling is not recommended at all. So while it can be emotionally difficult at times for parents, you want to think about consequences, natural consequences, letting the world be your child's teacher, and how you can step back and let those happen. We want to keep safety in mind. If you think there's a consequence that could be unsafe for your child, of course you want to step in. And then also, if you feel that there's just something that you just can't allow to happen, you are certainly part of the picture too. So that is fine to try to work around that in a different way. But again, you want to be clear that if your child doesn't realize that there's a consequence for their use, there is really no reason to change. So we do want those to happen as much as possible. And then finally, making your consequences happen. So you clearly can have your own boundaries and expectations around what you can and can't accept. And one thing, it should be clear and defined, your consequences. There should be definite communication between parents and your child about what the consequence will be. So be consistent and follow through on agreed upon consequences. One of the things that's really the most, something that's really not helpful is to tell your child there's a certain consequence for their behavior, and then when that behavior happens, to back down or to get manipulated out of it, or have one parent agree to the consequence, but the other one not really following through. And this is something that can really, it brings the power then to your child. They lose respect for you. And they also feel like there's no consequences for their behavior. So as a parent, you must be willing and able to deliver the consequence. And it's better to not have a consequence or say, come up with something unless you're going to follow through. And you want to match it appropriately with the behavior. So you don't want to give the biggest consequence at the beginning. You want to start small and kind of work up and try to work with your child in other ways before you start, as they say, the big hammer. Save those kind of things for down the road, if at all possible. So, as I mentioned, the Partnership to End Addiction does have peer coaching. You can call their helpline. They have a counselor there that will answer the phone. And also, just if you have questions or you need help with something real specific, they are there for you. That you are, for most family members, if they feel you're an appropriate fit, you are be able to get 5 coaching sessions with a peer. So that is a wonderful resource I want to make sure everyone knows about. And then if you're interested in more information from me, my website is cathytaughinbaugh.com. You can reach out by phone, or I have a contact page there, or just by email as well. My email is cathy@cathytaughinbaugh.com. So I'm happy to be of help. And if there's something I can help you with, just don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Cathy. You provided us with just some excellent suggestions and strategies, I think, for dealing with children that have a substance use disorder of some sort, some kind of a problem they're dealing with. I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions, though. I think you know that our organization works to ensure through our educational programs and practices that youth don't travel down that path in the first place. So we're working on the front end, the prevention side. So I'm wondering if you have any suggestions, looking back in your own personal life and working with your children and just, being in this world, this particular environment, what would you suggest to parents that they can do to help their kids not travel down that road? I picked up on listening. I think that's a really key thing, really having that conversation and building a relationship that ensures that your child feels comfortable talking with you about issues and concerns themselves. But what else could you suggest?
Well, as you mentioned, the listening is important. I think communication, aside from some of the things I've said here, just talking with your children about the dangers of drug use on a regular basis is helpful. But the communication skills, I think all of them can be used with any child. The thing that's great about them is they're not only for substance use, but they can be for other behaviors as well. So I think the more you can keep a positive relationship with your child, the greater chance you're going to have that your child's going to be listening to you and not heading down this road to drug use. I think that's one of the keys. They need to feel heard. They need to feel that, they have healthy options. I think offering your children, activities that can compete with drug use is super important. And I think if you find that your child is starting to dabble in this or starting, being proactive is real important. I mean, just getting right on it and turning your child around quickly can help. And just as I'm saying, I know it's not easy. It's difficult, but I think the studies really show that the more parents are involved with their kids and really talking about it often, the better off the kids are and the less chance they have of going down this road.
And then what about some of those early signs of possible use and abuse?
Well, I think many of them, such as, the friends change, the grades start to slip. Parents have said, their kids kind of isolate in their rooms a lot all of a sudden, and that's something new. They just, the parents often can sense that, something's different just in their behavior. But I think a lot of times it's or dropping out of sports, teams, or, if they had other activities that they liked, kind of changing that. So any of those kind of things. I think the grades too is one of the things that really stands out, because you can't really do drugs. You can't be participating in drugs and really being able to study and keep up. But so yeah, just noticing. I think parents, being on top of it, noticing who your children's friends are, talking to the parents, being involved, that kind of thing.
Well, and it just seems that setting a really good example yourself in terms of your own substance use is really important.
Sure.
You hear too often, at least I do, and I'm sure you have too, about parents feeling it's okay if they're doing it at home to, let their kids drink or even, get involved in marijuana use as long as they're staying home. And I don't know if and especially having the free and opportunity to have other kids over as long as they stay home and they're not drinking and driving and that sort of thing. Do you have a perspective on that?
Right. No, and I agree with you. It's not healthy. I think there's some research on that, you can have a greater chance that your child will go down that road of using drugs. And the other thing is if you have children over, it's very hard to control that. And you never know what's going to happen, maybe the neighbor's kids or one of your child's friends goes off and injures themselves in some way. And then that's really your responsibility. So no, I do not, I'm not a proponent at all of having kids drink or use marijuana at home. The other thing one thing that came up to me one time that I thought was sort of interesting is a parent said, how a friend of theirs child was smoking marijuana. Their child was having a lot of difficulty. They were smoking marijuana all the time too, and their grades were going down and they were struggling in many ways. But their friends were not. One of their friends was not. And the parent was very dismissive, like, well, my child's doing well, so I'm not going to, worry about it too much. So I think that too I think it's important as parents to really step back and be concerned about everyone's kids. It's not just your child. And really in the end, we know it will catch up with you more, sooner or later. And we know it's not healthy for the teenage brain, no matter how well the child's able to kind of cover it and continue to do well. But I think it's important as parents to think about everyone's kids. I mean, if we all, really monitor and try to keep our kids to be, not using drugs and alcohol, it's better for everyone. It's better for everyone, because there are some kids that are really going to go down a bad road, and you want to help out and make sure that doesn't happen, even if it's not your child.
Yeah, well, there's the drinking and driving and drug driving and all those things, and we've just heard too many examples over the years of tragic things happening. Kids are driving under the influence of whatever that might be.
Right.
And then, especially we are in California, and so our state, as well as so many others now, have approved marijuana for even recreational use. What perspective do you have, though? Because I hear a lot that parents will say, well, they're only using marijuana because they don't even have a real strong perception of harm with marijuana.
Right.
What is your view, if you don't mind sharing, on marijuana use for youth? And what?
Oh, well, yeah, no, I don't think, it definitely, I mean, the science shows it changes a teen's brain. It's not healthy. There are some instances where children's psychosis, they have gained psychosis. The marijuana use is, the drugs now are much heavier and more potent than they were, say 20 years ago or whenever, 30 years ago.
Right.
So, it makes it complicated when it's legal, that's for sure. But I think it's the same as drinking. I mean, do we want our 16-year-olds to be drinking? No. I mean, most parents would say no. So why would you want them to be doing marijuana? I think the goal is to get them through as far as as far as they can without using anything. I mean, it's just, it's not helpful. None of it's helpful.
Well, we want their brains to end up to be everything they were meant to be, right? And I know that introducing substances, and especially the younger age, these substances are introduced into that youth developing brain, the more likely you're going to have a problem, especially if there's a family history of substance use disorder. And the last thing I wanted to explore real quickly with you is the issue of stigma. We now know, I know you and I know, and more people are realizing that, using drugs and becoming an addict or having someone with substance use disorder, as we like to say now, trying to change the stigma using different language, that, it's really an important thing for us to identify and understand that it is a brain disorder more than a moral failing. And so somebody with that condition is someone we need to help. And if we can turn our brains around to think of it more as a medical condition than a moral failing, I think we can start to break the stigma down. That keeps people from even asking for help. The shame
Right.
keeps them from saying, yeah, I've got a problem. So if we can really turn that around, I think we can do a lot better job in getting the help for our young people and for our adults that are out there. Let's face it, this problem affects, people of all ages. So any other last thoughts, Cathy, at all before we close?
No, and I'll just stop my share here real quick too.
Okay.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the shame and stigma is really one of the major problems with this. I mean, it just holds people back. I know parents who, have not reached out for help. I've heard from parents, especially like in some small towns, or they don't want to go to any kind of meetings because they don't want to meet anybody, and they don't want to reach out. And it just makes it flourish when it's, you don't talk about it. And it makes you also feel worse, and there's more stress, and sadly it can go on, unfortunately, for years if it's not caught or prevented, which is what you're doing, the great work that you're doing.
Right.
So it's very stressful for parents. So yeah, I mean, I wish really in high schools too that there would be more upfront information, like parents are all given, here's a lot of resources, here's a list, here's what you can do. There's a lot of things that I think that could be put in place. But I think honestly, April, even the schools don't want the stigma. They don't want people to feel like,
No.
well, our school has this problem, which we know every school has a problem.
Right.
Doesn't mean, you're not a good school. It's just, you want to help kids get through. So,
Right. Yeah, I absolutely agree that we need to do more in our schools, really starting as early as probably grade school. In a
right,
very simple way, medication
right.
and workplace safety, and then moving into more the reality of usage of it and what can happen downstream from it. So anyway, we're just going to keep plugging along. So you're a wonderful resource. I hope people will reach out to you. I also have a screen up here to help people navigate over to NCAPDA. So we're giving presentations wherever they're needed for parents, for youth, people of all ages, including seniors, by the way, because this
Good.
problem, people don't, it doesn't matter. There are problems at all ends of the age spectrum. So please visit us. Please share this information. This is going up on our YouTube channel. We'll show it in other ways too. So connect with Cathy, connect with NCAPDA. And thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you so much, Cathy, for sharing all your wonderful information.
Oh, you're welcome, April. And thank you for all that you're doing to help. You've done amazing work.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.